Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Innovation Podcast, your source for all things innovation. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today is a very special reunion 2020 episode. What is that? That's when I had a guest on in the past, and I liked him so much I had to bring him right on back. So today's special return guest is Morvareed Salehpour, and she is the managing partner over at Salehpour Legal Consulting. Morvareed, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, man, so good to have you back on the show. Like I was telling the pre-show, it's kind of like the podcast family reunion over here, so great stuff there. And I want to get into today's topic. So we're going to get into a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, tech executives listening right now. We're going to get into some of the legal considerations that tech companies should be thinking about during growth periods. But before we get into that, I don't want to assume that all of our new listeners caught your first episode. So let's just go a little bit further into what you're doing over at Salehpour Legal Consulting. Tell us a little bit more about your firm, please.
Sure. So I am a Big Law trained lawyer, worked for Fortune 100 companies and worked on the Madoff Ponzi scheme recovery at a large international law firm, and then started my own practice after that and work with businesses and entrepreneurs and help them with negotiating and drafting their business contracts and tech transactions and dealing with business disputes that move forward and need to go to court and be litigated. So I'm kind of outside general counsel for these businesses and help them basically, grow and operate in a way that makes sense for them to minimize legal risks and maximize business interests.
And so, what are typically, and what are a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, executives listening, what are typically the right types of clients and or niches for Salehpour Legal Consulting?
Sure. So I deal with everything from individual entrepreneurs who are really early stage and need help with formation. And then I have clients that are, have had several rounds of funding. They're hundreds of employees, millions of dollars in revenue. They've been around for a while. I think the really important thing that I look for when I accept a client is that they are, actually ready, understand that legal is a key component of their business and growing their business, and have put a budget towards it and are ready to actually move forward and invest in their own business.
That's awesome, and I think this is also a great transition. So let's get into today's topic. So legal considerations for tech companies. Let's talk a little bit to that maybe, and I know that's a broad topic, but maybe let's talk about that early stage tech company for now. Let's kind of focus in on some of those that are listening. So what kind of things should they be thinking about?
So they need to be really, if it's a business that's very early and you haven't even formed yet, formation is a big issue, and that's something you need to be seeking counsel from both an attorney like myself or from a business CPA, because there are tax and legal consequences involved there with what entity form you pick. So that's a very important analysis. Additionally, there are, especially in the tech space, there are a lot of regulations that come into play. So it's very important to make sure your business is actually legal, because you don't want to be investing a year, 2 years into something and then finding out you have a illegal business model. And that's definitely something I've encountered in the startup space. Is I've talked to people who, like last year I was speaking to someone who had a business model and they'd been invested about a year and a half in growing it. And I told them it was, their model was based on bribery. And that was something I tell them, and, your business has nowhere to go because it's got a legal business model. So it's very important to be having those discussions early on so you're not wasting time and money growing something that's not really, growable.
Mm-hmm. Let's assume hopefully that they're seeking the right legal counsel. They have their business entity in place. Everything's set there, and now they're thinking about contracts and what that looks like and that part of the growth. I mean, what should they be thinking there?
Sure. So whenever you are engaging in any kind of business, you have clients, you have vendors, you have all those transactions that you're engaging in. So it's very important to be getting those template contracts in place. So again, that's something you will work with your legal counsel. Make sure you have a well-drafted contract that you can use with your clients, and that your agreements with any vendors are also protective of your interests. And I've seen issues here where a lot of early stage startups make the error of either making an oral contract, trying to put something together themselves, cutting and pasting something that they just found on the internet. All those are severely deficient, and it gets these businesses in severe trouble down the road. I've seen like a situation last year where a guy had cut and paste, and it ended up a situation where his clients actually didn't have to pay him because the contract was so badly drafted.
Can you talk a little bit more about, because I feel like for a lot of business owners, the contract piece is a sticking point. And I've heard this from many, many attorneys in the past, and it's like if you get a lot of these contracts and things done up front, and sometimes you just incur that expense in the front end, you have the potential of saving yourself a lot of money down the line, because the whole point of all this stuff is you don't want to end up in court. Like, you want it to be straightforward. You want it to be, you know what I mean? Like, all parties know what's going on, and you want this to not, as disagreements arise, if there's less, if it's just black and white and the contracts are done well, you're less likely to end up in court or some types of arbitration. Can you talk on that a little bit more from your experience?
Sure. Yeah. So that's definitely correct. Getting those well-drafted agreements in place early on helps prevent a lot of litigation and limits any litigation that ends up going forward for any reason. It basically helps it come to a quicker and less stressful end. I've seen situations where people did have those deficient contracts. They could have spent a couple of thousand. Particularly, I recall one situation, could have spent a couple thousand putting together the contract, did not, so ended up into a situation where they spent hundreds and thousands of dollars on legal fees, litigating the issue over the course of multiple years, ending in a settlement at the end of the day that was a high value. And all of that could have been avoided by putting together in place a founder agreement at the beginning. And that's something I find a lot of, founder disputes are very common, for example, because founders often don't put that agreement in place.
Man, that's that's the worst case scenario, and I always say that, but I'm like, that's the big thing there, is that I think sometimes people misunderstand the point of all the contracts and what you're doing with them, other than just fulfillment and some of the other things and staying in. It's basically, you don't want to have those big disagreements down the line. So Morvareed, first off, I know we just barely scratched the surface, and I can talk to you about this all day long. I know we barely scratched it, but that being said, we're about out of time. If somebody's listening to this and they want more information on Salehpour Legal Consulting, to connect with you, what's the best way for them to follow up?
Sure. So you can always email me, which is my first initial last name at salehpourlaw.com. I'm also on Instagram with my full name, Morvareed, at Salehpour Law, and then on LinkedIn with my full name, Morvareed Salehpour. I also post legal tips videos pretty regularly on those platforms. So if you are an early business, those will help kind of educate you about the issues that you need to be thinking about, and that way you know when you need to seek legal counsel.
Fantastic. Well, Morvareed, been great having you back on the show today. I can't wait to have you back for Family Reunion 2021. I'm already planning it, so don't worry. You're going to get the invite. It'll be fun. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you had a lot of fun listening. We had fun making this for you. If you did, don't forget, subscribe to the podcast. Leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Innovation, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments in the comment section. Love to know what kind of projects and things you're working on. And Morvareed, thanks again for coming on the show.